Hello, and welcome to the Haddencott Tramway project, which is a free little route that I'm making in celebration of my upcoming 200th Trainz livestream. So it'll be uploaded to the DLS once it's finished. As you can see, this is post-commentary with a time-lapse of what I'm building, or what I have built, in the background, which, by the way, I do want feedback on, if you like this, or what I can maybe improve about it, or things like that. Because this is a new form of Trainz video. I've not done this before. So yes, feedback is appreciated. So let's get to what I'm building in the background. This route is set in the UK, kind of near end of steam, so definitely BR days, British Railways if you don't know. And I do have a little map of this route before I started making it. It's 5x5 baseboards. Mainly, so there are two main industry chains. The first is just a few passenger stops. The second is a steel mill, which has iron ore and coal and limestone as flux delivered to it, and then outputs steel, which then gets transferred onto the canal there that you can see. So what I'm currently doing is painting on where the lines should go, looking at the map that I had drawn beforehand. And if you're wondering how to do this, by the way, how I'm doing it here, if you zoom out to just before it transitions to the 2D maps, just enough that the 3D models are technically still loaded, then you can actually still draw on them and do things like update baseboards or things like that. It's actually very useful. So one thing that I should mention is that I have decided to make this route seasonal, but at this point in the video, I had not decided that yet. So I'm just trying out different textures and things like that. Oh yes, originally I wanted to go with more darker grungy theme, but I wasn't quite happy with it. So now you can see I'm trying out the happier, more saturated grass color, and I'm much happier with that. So that's the one that I've decided to use. But I did like the other grass textures, so I've decided to use those as kind of the embankment textures, as you can see. Yes, and now I'm trying out different trees, and this is when I first thought, oh, maybe I can make this route seasonal. So as you can see in the top left corner in the filter, I've actually searched for season. And another thing that I've decided is to use different tree types, or different tree assets in different areas on the route, to make this small route feel larger by separating it into different areas. So as you can see here, along that long straight stretch by the canal, I'm using mostly, actually you'll be able to see this bit better in a moment, I'm using mostly deciduous trees. And yes. By the way, the ballast that I'm using is a TB asset, which has, while it is seasonal, it's always snowy in winter. Most of the other assets that I'm using aren't, so unless I specifically set the snow height layer to that. So it might seem a bit confusing, but my point is, if you have a ballast asset that might work for this, that is seasonal, that is not necessarily snowy in winter, but is snow in winter, if you set the snow height low enough, then I would be much appreciated to have that. Sorry if that's a bit confusing. Right, so here I've decided to put in a bridge to kind of separate the scenes a little, because I do want to have a town on the right there. And so I thought, well, if I have a railway bridge going over it, which there actually is a little bit further that way that I'm pointing, which you can't see, then I might as well have a road as well. So now I'm looking through different kinds of seasonal fields to see what they look like in the different seasons to determine which ones I want. Yeah, there you can see the ballast being snowy in winter, even without the other setting. Yes. Right, and here I'm using the UK roads 8-meter assets, which these roads are not seasonal, but they do have all the correct UK road markings and they look really good. And I've tested this in winter as well, and even with everything else looking snowy, it's not too big of an issue that they're not snowy, so I'm actually okay with that. And here I was having trouble aligning it to the level crossing, because the level crossing spline point is actually a bit lower, because it's expecting you to use a road that's actually floating a bit above the ground, because when this asset was made, the crossing asset, the road assets used to float above the ground because they didn't have any shadows, but now that these splines do have shadows, they have to be much lower down. So that's why I had to do a little bit of correction work there. And here I'm just fixing, I'm just patching it up. And it looks like a bit of patched up road, which I'm quite happy about. Ah yes, and here, this is a trick that I found out about how to do kind of very gradual slopes for embankments. There is one other way where you can use splines that are going at a right angle to the tracks, that are going up, well, at a specific degree, and then you can set the height to those, but that takes time. So doing it the way that I've just done it is a little bit faster if it works in your case. So yeah, here I'm using the some TB assets and some other seasonal grass splines, which are also quite nice. Yeah, one thing that I really like about doing a European route like this, Europe as in the continent, not necessarily the European Union, because again, where this takes place, that I don't think that was a thing. So, although it could be mistaken, I haven't actually looked this up. So here I'm setting up the steel works. I'm going to need 4 multiple industries for that. Like I said previously, one for the iron, one for the coal, one for the limestone, one to pick up the steel coils. And if you're a keen observer, you might have noticed that I only have put down 3 at this point. And that's because I forgot about the limestone when I built this. But I'm sure at some point during the video I'll remember and fix that. So yeah, just working on the basic layout. And I'm trying to not make this too big, because the route is only 5 by 5 baseboards square. So yeah, just putting in a few sidings, runaround tracks, things like that. Yeah, I decided to make these sidings go around a curve, because it's more interesting that way, and it makes shunting a little bit more fun as well when the tracks that you go down don't just go in straight lines as they often do. And I put in another little runaround track, because that rightmost multiple industry is for the steel coils, so that's why. Oh yes, and here I'm putting in the limestone thing, and I originally wanted to have it connect up to this bit of track, but because it already had the angle, but then I thought, wait, why am I creating a diamond when I could just have it connect to the other track that's already on the runaround loop? So that's what I did. And here I'm putting in little hills of the different stuff that you can unload, so it's clear where to unload what. And then I realized that when I put in the conveyors, the hills were actually too close, so I'm using the copy-paste tool on replace mode to just move those hills over a little bit. And what I'm doing now is essentially separating the scene, because, again, of how small this route is, to make it feel larger, I need to cut off the line of sight in some places. So even though you've already gone past that little level crossing and past over the switch, I still want there to be a little bit of woodland there before you actually get into the industrial area. And they can see a little bit of snow and me looking for seasonal textures. Right, and now I'm making the template for a little woodland in this area, leading up from the main line over to the branch leading over to the steelworks. And the reason why I had already painted the ground this brown color is so that I can more easily see the square that I will then be copying, so I don't have to guess where the actual lines are. Now I've put it over there just for safekeeping, in case I need to copy it at some point in the future without basically copy it the way it is without anything being replaced or anything like that. So yeah, here I'm using my usual method of just covering everything in trees and then deleting the things where the trees that are in the way, or actually, as you see, moving them. Yeah. Putting in hills because I want a reason for there to be a woodland here and for it to not have been cleared away for farmland. Plus, it looks nice, and it also breaks up the lines of sight again, as I mentioned before. So yes, here I'm moving the trees out of the way instead of deleting them, because this way of doing it makes the forest more dense, or denser, directly next to the tracks, which is useful, and that's what I want. So just going through painting the ground, as you can see. Yeah, and then this is a thing that a lot of forests in the UK have that I've been to, is just ferns on the ground. I know there are different kinds of forests. You've got ones where mostly grasses, you've got mostly ferns, you've got shrubbery, you've got all sorts of different things. But this one with the coniferous trees, I find ferns fit really well. So that's what I've done, and then of course put a little bit of grass next to it as well. And yeah, what I'm doing now is just crisscrossing grass plines off in the forest and then checking whether you can see the forest floor when looking at an angle, at a right angle from the tracks. Because that is a thing that I am paying attention to. When you look at a right angle from the tracks into the forest, can you see that the grass plines just end there? Or can you only see grass plines? Because I want a mixture of grass plines and of forest floor, but we've already gone past that. So here we go, I'm putting in a little substation because I've decided that in addition to the normal steel works thing here, I do also want to have a little power plant here that is only for this industry. So if you're already delivering coal here, might as well have a little power plant as well. So yeah, I'm also thinking about maybe having another power plant over by the town, like the big town that is on the other side of the canal, or will be on the other side of the canal, since I've already got a line going over there and I've already got a coal mine, or will have a coal mine on the map, but I'm not entirely sure about that yet. So just, yeah. Oh yes, and I've added a little station here for the workers to get to and from the industry. Not really showed that well, but here we are. Oh yes, and I've decided to add ivy to the side of this building to make it look a little bit more interesting, but since those assets aren't seasonal, I've had to put in snow drifts over them to cover things up. Yeah. Now we're back over here, and the other area isn't finished, but what I tend to do is just hop back and forth between a few areas when just working offline to keep things fresh and to then return back to an area with a bit of distance to better evaluate the situation, I guess. So yeah, here I've decided to place a couple of ruins in this open field because I really like the look of this open field here, but I wanted some reason for why this field hadn't been used for farming. So hey, some old ruins do the trick. They're probably under Heritage Trust or something, so yeah. And then I thought of, what do they look like in winter? Well, I need to put some snow over here, some snow drifts, so it looks more realistic, so that's what I'm doing. Which was a little tricky because it kept rotating the grass objects that I had placed down. But yeah. And yes, now we're back over here and decided, okay, well, let's finish this area. Well, I say finish this area because this route is so small. A lot of the areas are actually visible from more than one side. So I finished the part of this area that is most visible from this side. And here I'm messing around with the roads, trying to get the one sidewalk road to connect properly, but apparently in Service Pack 5, the direction in which you connect a spline to another spline is overwritten by the direction that other spline is facing, if that makes sense, which is a little annoying, but oh well. So yes, decided to put a little church there just to make it look a little bit more realistic and another point of interest. And also mixed up the terraced houses so as to not look too monotone. Yes. Back to fields. Adding a little bit of a barrier there. Sorry if you could hear that, the motorcyclist out there. Yeah, a little bit of a barrier so that, again, breaking up the line of sight. It's an important thing with small routes such as this. Adding another little connection over to the town. And yes, I am placing the animals on their own layer so that for the winter sessions I can turn them off when they would probably be housed indoors somewhere. Yes, as you can see, I am paying attention to have gates on my fields so that it just adds a little bit more realism. Yeah, and then just adding some random boulders in the fields, which they sometimes do exist in just fields here in some areas of the UK. And decide, well, let's put some in here as well, just so it doesn't look too artificially placed in that one meadow or field. So that's what I'm doing there. And at this point, I had already recorded a lot. I have actually started working on this branch here, going further up to where the quarry and the mine is. But I had already recorded so much that I only later thought, oh, I should probably edit that down so I can free up a little bit more disk space as well, so yeah. But actually, we're getting close to the end of the time-lapse portion. So after the time-lapse, there are going to be some cinematics of trains driving along and things like that. But before we get to that, I would like to mention that I've set up accounts on donation sites. So that is Patreon, PayPal, Ko-fi, and Subscribestar. So if you like any of our stuff, want to support it, then that is a good way of doing so. Links will be in the description if you're interested. If not, no worries. So yes, I'll just let you enjoy the rest of the time-lapse and then the cinematics. Thanks for watching.